right, welcome on this 1 o'clock on Tuesday the 26th. Thanks for joining me as we go over round 2 of the ambulance service training and staffing grant. And I'm going to be sharing my screen because I'm going to go in between the PowerPoint as well as some of the websites I want to show you all. So this money and grant program came out of the 2025 legislative special session, and we had basically they wanted to address the EMT workforce shortages in Minnesota, and the main goal is to support the Earn While You Learn recruitment programs, and those can be either existing or something that you want to start doing at your ambulance service. The goals I've listed here of basically making the EMT training financially feasible, providing paid on-the-job training, and to also hopefully attract diverse candidates and strengthen EMS readiness across the state of Minnesota. There's one criteria, two different ways to meet it. You must be a licensed ambulance service, two criteria, and have at least 50% of your staffing by EMTs. And there's two different ways to get to that, either based on the roster, 50% of your roster, and you can provide that or have an updated roster, or response data. So those are the two different ways, and you must be licensed with us. So an overview, there were $2 million that was appropriated for this funding stream. We've granted out in our first round about 0.5 million. So we've got 1.5 left to grant out, and there's 4 categories that you can spend the money. The EMT education program tuition, and that can be an online course, something that you offer, somebody else offers. So there's not a specific place or way that needs to be done, just that it's one of the accredited programs that we review and approve by OEMS. The EMT certification exam fees, so the National NREMT program, and then the background study fees, and that can kind of range, but we would need a justification on what exactly. I know there's a few different background studies that different places can choose. And then the wages and benefits, and this can be combined. So you have to combine, you could do like $20 an hour and then equate the benefits to $6 an hour, or however that kind of works out. But I wanted to point that out, is that 26 an hour is that combined rate of the benefits and the wages. And then for this round, the grant period is going to be hopefully July 15th. We're hoping to have everything done, but that's definitely what we're aiming for, going through June 30th of 2027. So looking at the application components, we need the assurances and the signed cover sheet, an application narrative, and this is going to include the required identification number. And this is basically what's called the SWIFT ID number. And most places, a lot of municipalities, if you're one that's owned by the city, they're going to have their SWIFT number, and you can use that. It's kind of whoever within the organization determines what that is, and that's something that you register with the Minnesota Management and Budget, and they manage the SWIFT numbers, but that's a requirement for us to be able to contract with you all. And it's starting to become something now that we've had more grants coming out to the ambulance services. It's becoming more kind of common and understood, but just getting that piece taken care of. And then the work plan and budget, and then the required exhibits. There's these are basically the attachments and additional items that are needed if you're requesting $50,000 or more. We're kind of doing like the mini grants if you're going to be doing less than $50,000, and you just need the assurances and signed cover sheet, the application narrative, the work plan and budget. And this goes over what I just said. All of them are going to need Exhibit A and Exhibit B. And then again, the assurance is a cover sheet, work plan and budget, and then required for applications of 50,000 and more are going to be these other ones. F or G are if you're a nonprofit or a for-profit. So those aren't needed if you're a municipality. And this is a SWIFT vendor resource page, which I will link just in case. You can get, if your organization already has a SWIFT number, you can go here to request an additional user link so that you could see some of that information. Another issue that's been coming up lately for ambulance services is if the ambulance service has an address that's different than, say, the city, or you have multiple locations, making sure each of those ambulance service locations have a corresponding address associated with the SWIFT number. And we're happy to help with some of that troubleshooting, but I just wanted to say that here because that's been coming up. But this is the best way. MMB is the one who you actually work with to make any changes or updates to your vendor number. And then looking at, so this is how you're going to access our, hopefully you've seen this before. Here's where the RFP, so the full overview of everything that I'm kind of briefly going over here if you want to get into some fun reading. And I wanted to start from our funding opportunity page. It lists a few other ones, but obviously this is the one that we're talking about today and the one that's open now. So there's the RFP, and then if you click on the overall kind of page devoted to the ambulance service training and staffing grant and scroll down, these are where you can access all of the application content, the exhibits that I'm looking for. So I've already got one example open, but here's the application portal, as well as the assurances. So if you click on this, you're going to get the attachment for all of these. This is going to be an Excel spreadsheet. So this is the budget and work plan. And then this is the budget. And there is an example page to give you an idea with just some estimates in there, as well as the budget key to kind of help you work through those pieces, because this is one of the highest pieces that's scored within the RFP. So that is how you access the attachments. And again, this is the 50,000 or more. You're going to need these. And then, it's always in my way. Okay. Here is, to go to the first page. This is what you're going to see when you click on the application. It gives you an overview of what's required for the mini grant or the bigger grant. The eligibility, you're going to need to select one of those, the roster-based or the response-based, whichever one works for you. And I've kind of pre-filled this out so we could go through it. And you can work on it and save it if you haven't been working on something already. And these ones are pretty, but so this is that SWIFT vendor number that I talked about. So making sure you have that in there. And where you're going to upload the assurances and completed and signed cover sheet. And the other piece that's important are these application narrative questions. And so making sure that you go through and answer all of those to the best of your ability that makes sense. And then here's that work plan and budget template. And if you're doing a mini grant, this is kind of where it stops. And this next page is if you're doing for over a $50,000 request. And that's where you're going to upload all of those exhibits that are, again, available on the website. So selection criteria, we've got a group of community reviewers as well as some people within staff at OEMS that are going to be looking at the applications that come in. The overall selection criteria is based off of the application and the exhibits. So it's looking at program need, the long-term plan of any successful EMTs within the program, the sustainability of your EMT workforce, what your recruitment and selection plan is to get those people into your service, your service readiness to be able to have this grant as well as manage a program, even if you're not doing the education yourself. And then your location and service area. We know everybody has a PSA, but making sure that that's kind of just clear for our reviewers that aren't as familiar with those pieces. And then here's the points overall, the assurances and cover sheet. This is going to be your easiest 10 points, I hope. The application, it does need to be signed by somebody who could basically sign for the grant money. So thinking oftentimes this is an executive director or your, city manager, somebody that would have that authority to kind of sign an app, the contract, because the whole point that the assurances and cover sheet is you are signing the contract at the point of application. So that's why it's important when we ask that you review those and make sure that it's either a wet signature that then is scanned, or you do a verifiable e-signature for the document. But again, if that's done, you get 10 points. Project overview, 20 points. Service readiness and need, 20 points. The work plan and budget, that spreadsheet that I showed you, that's going to be your highest one. That's 30 points. And then the project impact. Timeline, we're getting closer to the application. We've got June 5th at 4 p.m. We're hoping to kind of process those quickly and get the grant period to begin. I'm aiming for July 15th, but sometime in July through June of 2027. So first thing will be the screening, making sure that whichever box you check of either roster or response based for that 50% EMT requirement, that's what we're looking for, making sure all the attachments are included and updated properly. And so eligibility and complete application is going to be the first part after you apply. Then it's going to go to the review committee for scoring. And then after that, staff at our office is going to do some of the risk assessment. This can be a little bit more involved if you're requesting more than $50,000. But again, we're just kind of, if you answer those attachments, we should have the majority of the information we need to be able to do that process. And then final decisions, if there's anything that is needed, it is made by the OEMS director. And just to give you an idea of what you're signing up for outside of what you can see within the assurances, there will be a monthly reporting and invoicing requirement. So that would start in August of 2026 and go through July of 2027. If you happen to do a shorter grant period time and you've spent all the money, then it would just be for that grant period. But otherwise, it's going to be for the grant period through July of 2027. If you don't have an invoice or any funds that you need reimbursed during a month, we still would need a progress report, and those are due on the 15th of the month, and that will be detailed in your grant award notification that hopefully you would get in July. The funds are limited to training and staffing costs. Again, those 4 things that I talked about in the beginning. There's not really any flexibility. It was listed right in statute of that's what's allowable. And so with that, no admin or travel cost reimbursement. I have in general kind of sometimes there's the question of like, hey, what if they have to travel for training? That's not allowed within this grant. So that would be an additional cost that you as the service would take on. And then also compliance with our Minnesota statute and policies. So that's going to be, if there's a financial reconciliation, providing the documentation for that, maintaining your grant records for a period of 3 years after the award, just some of those things that are listed in those assurances. Here's an overview of that progress report. We try and keep it simple. So this is going to be based on the work plan that you complete in that Exhibit B. And so you would just list your goal and this should exactly match your work plan, and then kind of again answer the questions, trying to keep it simple but also tailored to what you've said that you were going to do. Your responsibilities are using funds only for the EMT training and staffing, maintaining their financial records, and the monthly invoicing and reporting. And then if there's any, for grants more than 50,000, we would need to do a monitoring visit as well as do a financial reconciliation. But grants less than 50,000 at this point do not have that requirement. Okay, that's what I have. I don't see any questions in the chat, or let me double check. And And I think everything else should be on the website. There was some questions that were emailed, and I did respond to those, and they were updated on the website. So if you wanted to look at those, I think they're right on. If you go to the main AST&S grant page, there's the written questions and responses. And it looks like maybe somebody's typing a question. And Alex? I can wait for typing, no problem. So John, yeah, if you estimate that you're going to hopefully have 10 people in this program and you only end up with 6, basically there's not like money to be returned to the state because this is a reimbursement grant. So you would pay for the staff and then you would get reimbursed for whatever you actually end up spending. So again, that would be, that's why we're also doing the monthly to just help with that cash flow of like, okay, you get through the month, whatever you have spent in that time period, you report to us, we make sure it matches your work plan and budget, and then you would get reimbursed for that amount. So if you also end up with a grant that, you said you were going to do 68 and it ends up being 50,000, that would then go back at this point to the ambulance, basically to the same bucket. So it could potentially be eligible for somebody else in the future. Only new EMTs. Not any refresher courses. So the point of this was to add new EMTs to the workforce. So only the initial. Great. And then I think I haven't seen Alex. Here we go. I might have to get back to you on that one, Alex. I'm trying to think. I think because you do the training yourself, I think that would be if you wanted to say, hey, we do that. Yeah. Thank you, John. That is exactly what I was thinking of. Like you can be the one that offers the training, and then it would just be like a service that, then they would know. Because within the RFP, you're able to do also collaborations. And so that the grantee has to be an ambulance service, but if you're partnering with a different organization that provides the training, that is completely fine. So hopefully that answers your question. And there were the other part to that. Grantees from round 1, I think they were providing, I actually don't know where all of them, I know some of them were in-house training. I think that's probably the majority, but I know one of them is at least not from them. But it wasn't a requirement to state that and show that, just that you plan on sending them somewhere. Yep. But yeah, if there's services that are interested and there's a plan or a program that you want to come up with them and be a provision within that, that's absolutely acceptable and something that can happen. But yeah, well, if there's no other questions, this will also be posted to our website. So if for some reason you want to refer back to it, or if anybody didn't get to see it the first time, it will be posted. And otherwise, I look forward to reviewing applications that come in on the deadline. So thank you all for your time, everybody.